Alright, this video is more aimed at people in the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, than it is people here in the United States, where most of my audience would happen to be. A story just broke, and I've got a link to the blog story that I posted in the description. It's very, very, very bad. It's a very unsettling story that I think probably people will hear more about in the next few days, but if you spread it around, then it goes viral, and that works too. The UK, of course, has been using cameras in public places for a number of years. They say it's to reduce crime, but let's face it, cameras, as we've learned from various studies, do absolutely nothing to prevent crime. They only help with catching the criminal afterwards, and of course the UK, there's no guns among the populace. There's no access to certain explosive elements. So the UK is a pretty safe place to be overall. The problem is they've begun to install cameras in school bathrooms and in school changing rooms. Now, apparently it's legal in the UK to put cameras in these locations as long as there's an exceptional need. But there are several thousand cameras located throughout the UK in various schools in these bathrooms and changing areas. Now, I'm no genius, but if I was a pedophile in the UK, I would be clamoring for a job at the schools right now, just to watch this surveillance of these students using the bathroom, taking showers, and changing in the locker rooms. This is the most serious human rights abuse, possibly, since the Alien and Sedition Act over 200 years ago. This is absolutely, I mean, they must be out of their minds allowing the schools to do this. This is inexcusable. This is literally like 1984 George Orwell material, and people will say, well, no, you're exaggerating. How would you feel if your student was being monitored in the bathroom by a hidden camera that was watching them while they were nude, taking a shower or whatever? You wouldn't feel very good about that unless that sort of thing gets you off in the first place. Which, unfortunately, some people probably could get off to. The fact is, this is a serious abuse of people's rights, and they didn't even know these cameras were there until a Freedom of Information Act was filed, and they found that, yes, indeed, they're recording students in bathrooms. What if this is happening in other countries? Then we just don't know about it because nobody's filed a request. What if this is happening in the United States? It's possible that that is happening. But we know for a fact now it is happening in the UK. The UK is a Western nation, a highly developed, industrialized nation with a variety of things in place to keep people's rights protected. But yet they're allowing the schools to monitor their students in the bathroom and changing rooms. It just doesn't make sense. This is... I don't usually get alarmed by news stories because, number one, a lot of places they'll exaggerate. If you're using an alternate news source, they may exaggerate the story, make it sound worse than it really is. They may skew a few facts here and there. And most of these serious abuses happen outside of the United States anyway. But the United States and the UK cooperate a great deal on things like terrorism and homeland security. So this makes me somewhat worried that such a system is either A, already in place in the United States in schools, or B, may be put in place in the United States in schools. Because we've seen a trend lately since September 11th certainly, we've seen a trend towards these Western nations, the UK, Germany, France, the United States, certainly Canada, other developed Western nations investing more and more heavily in surveillance. Now, I think that everyone will agree there's no real problem with, for instance, having a camera hung on the street lamp so that if someone speeds through or has a collision in the four-way interchange of a highway or something like that, I think we'll all agree that it's perfectly fine to have cameras in those locations. Just, number one, to document who's breaking the law, who had an accident, who is at fault for that accident. It makes things more simple. And it doesn't invade anyone's privacy, because if they're driving in the car, they're obviously clothed. If you see Omar with a turban on, with his, AK-47 next to him in the passenger seat, that may help solve a crime or two. But this has nothing to do with that. This has nothing to do with terrorism. These are school children. Terrorists aren't known for congregating in girls' bathrooms in schools and plotting terrorist attacks. It just doesn't happen. I can't wrap my head around why they thought this was acceptable, number one, and number two, why they thought it was necessary. It seems to have no purpose behind it except to destroy the privacy of the people that are in these locations. It's very, very, very concerning. And it's even more concerning when you think about it this way. Yes, the UK has the most heavily surveillanced population on Earth. There are more cameras per person in Britain than any other country on Earth. Britain is number one for that. But there are plenty of other Western nations like the United States or Canada or Germany or France, a number of these other countries in which surveillance is growing quickly and may even outpace the British people. So while we don't have a problem with, in some really rough neighborhood in an area that's had a robbery 7 times, we don't have a problem with putting a surveillance camera up there to try to figure out who the hell's doing it. Or putting them on the roads, or putting them on, in large urban areas or industrial areas on the streets where there are a lot of crimes. Those things make sense. It doesn't invade anyone's privacy. It's not in their homes. It's not watching them undress. They're just there to prevent crime. This is akin to putting a camera inside the bathroom of a person's home. It's no different. You send your children off to school, you assume their privacy is taken care of, their safety is taken care of. What they have done is they have said that their security is so egregiously in danger that we need to violate their freedom in the first place. Now, I'm no genius. Isn't the purpose of stopping crime and terrorism to protect freedom and to protect liberty? Well, some people would argue it's to protect life. Well, what's life worth if you're not free? I think that most Westerners will agree that's a paradox. If we're trying to protect people's liberty, why would we then take their privacy and liberty away and expect that some sweaty old man, who's probably a pedophile for taking the job in the first place, is leering at 13, 14-year-old girls in the locker room? How is that possibly acceptable? It's the most ludicrous idea that I've ever heard in my life, and everybody should be up in arms in every country about this story, not just the UK, because it could spread anywhere else. It could already be happening here for all we know. Until someone files a Freedom of Information Act, which may or may not even get valued and submitted properly, until somebody does that, for all we know, there could be 100,000 secret cameras hidden in your preschool bathroom, so that Coco the Clown can go jack off to your children, and you wouldn't know about it. It could be that they're hiring a bunch of Catholic priests to do this, because we all know that those individuals love to remove people's liberty, reduce them to slaves, and whack off to little boys and girls as well. It's bullshit. And the fact that the UK government allows these schools to do this and or is convincing them to do so and monitoring it themselves is absolutely ridiculous. This is the most painfully obvious abuse of human rights. This is literally like something out of 1984 or V for Vendetta. And the British should be rioting in the streets right now and, burning cars like they do every time they lose a soccer game. But chances are they won't do that. The police, the G-men, will just come out and arrest them all. And then the government will come out with their usual smarmy, dry, sarcastic humor and say, oh, it is to take care of the terrorists. And, ramble about that, the Tony Blairs of the world and so forth, making excuses as to why it's okay. Or they'll cover it up and say, well, we didn't know that this was happening. We'll remove them. And then they won't really remove them. They'll just put more in. And then they'll be secretly videotaping the people who are the whistleblowers in the first place, probably. I'm sure there are secret cameras positioned all around their buildings as well. But it's a sad day for freedom. Hopefully this isn't happening in the United States, although it's entirely possible that it is. I just hope that the British people wise up at some point and either overrun their government and kick them all out of office, or just, remove the whole system. You know, rebuild the system because it's obvious that it's not working when their privacy means so little to the government that they're actually allowing schools to spy on 13-year-old girls. That's just unacceptable. And I think even the heavily censored British populace will agree that that is in fact the case. Peace out.